Welcome and thanks for joining. My name is Jennifer Morse and I am the Director of Product Evangelism here at MadCap Software. Today we're going to take a high-level look at the features and benefits of authoring in a topic-based environment like MadCap Flare. We'll explore the advantages of topic-based authoring over traditional authoring. We'll showcase some of the rich single sourcing capabilities of Flare. We'll go through the UI at a high level, and we'll import some content. Finally, we'll build some outputs and show you how technical communicators, instructional designers, content strategists, and more are streamlining their content creation with modern responsive HTML5 support sites, knowledge bases, customer success portals, online help, training materials, and also print-based outputs, all from a single source and all out of the box with MadCap Flare. Now, I don't expect anyone to be an expert at the end of this session, but my goal is to introduce you to concepts and terms you'll likely learn more about as you continue down your journey with Flare. So first, there are 4 key reasons why folks consider using Flare for content management and content development. The first one is content reuse. Authors have the issue of having the same procedure or policy or article or help topic or training content strewn across lots of different manuals. And they're really tired of updating the same content across all of those different manuals whenever there's a change, particularly to the common bits that are often shared among all of these different manuals. So that's a big thing that we address. The next one is this notion of multi-channel publishing. Suppose you had 15, 16, 20 manuals. It wasn't such a big deal if they were always delivered as one type of format, maybe PDF. But maybe you have to have that content delivered as a manual that's more searchable and navigable online, maybe viewable on a mobile device or a tablet. So we have to be mindful of how content adjusts or responds to smaller screen sizes. Or perhaps you need to produce an internal knowledge base for your support team, or a publicly facing knowledge base, or perhaps you need to publish your content to Salesforce or Zendesk. So that's the other problem we solve. The content you write in Flare can be published to these different channels that you need to support. Another one is improved self-service. When you have searchable and findable documentation, you help reduce support calls that come into your organization. You help empower your end users to find the answers they need whenever they need it. And when we get content out of the print-based world only and online, if we want, we can start gathering data. We can look at topic views, keyword searches that everybody uses, search terms that yield no results. So you can measure and improve the overall body of content based on how your users are searching and using your content every day. And then the last thing is ease of use. The other thing we're trying to help solve here is we don't want content authors to necessarily feel like they have to be XML programmers in order to achieve all of this functionality. So in terms of that first content reuse bullet I mentioned, I want to do a quick comparison with something familiar to all of us, which is Microsoft Word. The challenge with Word is that the very things that make it so easy for us to use are the things that get in the way of content reuse. That's because when you're working in Word, you're doing 3 things at once. It's not something that you probably think about because it's become second nature for most of us. But what's happening is you're writing your content for one. You're also embedding all of your formatting. So what do my fonts look like? What do my paragraph spacing look like? What do my bullet styles look like? And the last thing that you're doing is you're defining the overall scope of the document. And what do I mean by scope? Well, if I'm writing a training manual for my hourly employees, it's always a training manual for my hourly employees. If it's an install guide for product A, it's always going to be an install guide for product A. So essentially what that document is gets baked right into it. And as a result, we don't really have a great way of reuse in Word. The typical thing we have to do in something like Word is that if you start out with a draft of a manual, and in my example here, I have a draft user manual. This could be anything. If you need to make some sort of derivative version of that document or a slightly write it or change it for a slightly different audience, well, then you have to go through a save as exercise in Microsoft Word. And now you end up with 2 copies that stemmed from that one draft. And, maybe you can deal with 2. These are going to have some differences between them, obviously, 2 different audiences, but there's going to be potentially some shared stuff between them. So In these two, maybe you can manage that. You still got to go into both of them though, if the common elements between them need to be updated, maybe a copyright statement or a privacy notice or something like that. The bigger challenge happens though when we have to go through that save as exercise more than once. Maybe if we start branching out more, maybe we start producing more products and we need to make unique user guides or install guides or system requirements guides or training material to support the different products that we're generating. So every time we need a new unique output, we have to save as and create some copies. And that's a very inefficient way to work. If you distill down to what's happening, as long as you're over here on the right-hand side of the screen, you're always hand touching and hand editing your end deliverables. The whole idea of Flare and content management in general is we want to be over here on the left-hand side of the screen. We want to be in a position where if procedure X is written, and it may live in a bunch of different guides, we want to be in a place where procedure X only exists once. We only have to update and edit it once. And those changes will cascade everywhere that procedure is used. So how do we do this? Well, those things I spoke about in Word, how we're writing everything, we're embedding the formatting, and we're defining the scope. Well, when we work in Flare, we break those into separate components. So the content authoring part is where I'll start, because we do things a little bit different from the traditional way. When we're working in something like Word or something like Google Docs, it's a little bit more linear. We start at the beginning and we write until we get to the end. Flare doesn't work that way. We follow what's known as topic-based authoring. So we work on much more granular content, which we call topics. So if you think of perhaps a long manual that you've got, maybe one of them has 5 or 6 chapters in it. Well, that's 5 or 6 really good granularity points. But maybe we go a little deeper. If we just look at chapter 3, for example, maybe chapter 3 is made up of 2 procedures and 2 reference sections. And that's another level of granularity. And that's what we're going to do in Flare. We're going to take those 2 procedures and those 2 reference sections that make up the entirety of chapter 3, and we're going to break those out as standalone files. We call those files topics. So there isn't really a rule that says topics can't be so long or topics can't be this short. Generally, or ideally, topics should have an identifiable purpose. They should be about a specific subject, and they should be able to stand on their own. They should act like a complete communication and not need a lot of other stuff to make sense. So in my example here, I've got a bunch of objects on the screen. These would represent topics in my Flare project. So if I want to make a procedure manual that just includes these highlighted topics here on the screen, well, in Flare, I can grab them and stitch them together like little Lego bricks and produce a unique document or manual or site. But at the same time, maybe I need to create a slightly different site. This time it contains these highlighted topics. So in Flare, I can grab them, stitch them together in whatever order that I want, and produce another unique output. So by modularizing our content like this, we're not adding any extra work. We're just adding a lot more flexibility on how we can reuse this information in the future. And oftentimes going from the linear approach to the topic-based approach solves a lot of problems for a lot of people. But sometimes we have to go to another level. Perhaps this topic, general troubleshooting, there happened to be some overlap in that example I just showed. It was in the first output I was producing and in this guide that I was producing. Well, maybe general troubleshooting needs to look a little bit different for that second output I'm generating. Maybe there's some sensitive information for the audience that's looking at it. Well, we don't want to duplicate our general troubleshooting content and then edit it to meet the needs of this audience or this output type. That just sticks us in that inefficient way of working in terms of duplicating our source materials. So in Flare, we can take care of that problem with what we call single source publishing. So fancy industry term, maybe you've heard it, but in plain English, what it means is that if I've got a version of my content for audience A and a special version for audience B and an entirely different variation for audience C, I'm not going to have 3 versions to maintain. I'm going to put my content into one set of content and source. I'm going to let my software do all the heavy lifting at that point. So what it ends up looking like in Flare, it's a bit of a simulation, is that I would start by creating my master set of source files, so my master set of topics. So I've got a sample topic here, let's say called Getting Started. And this Getting Started topic may need to look a little bit different depending on what I'm generating or who it's for. So the next step after I have it authored, what I'm going to do in Flare is I'm going to add content like conditional tags and variables to customize this source material. So as an example, perhaps this first paragraph here, this is an opening paragraph for the folks that buy the standard version of our product. So it's going to get a special color code. I can apply this in Flare, which we'll do, to let me know this is special. This tag says, hey, this content, this is only for the folks that buy the standard version of our product. This next paragraph here, maybe this is an alternate opening paragraph. This is unique to the Pro version of our product, so it gets a different color code to let me know that it's special. These next two paragraphs here, these are the same for everybody. We're going to leave them alone. But maybe this last paragraph is not only for the folks that have the standard version of our product, but I only want it to show up when I generate the Quick Start user guide. I don't want it to show up at all when they access documentation online. So it yet gets another color code to let me know that it's special. So if content is unique for any reason at all in Flare, I can use one of these color codes to let me know that it's special. So it's great for the writer. We know this information, there's something special going on here, but we can't deliver it to our customers looking this way. So Flare's going to help us generate these custom deliverables. Now, one thing that's important to note is these topics that we're authoring, these are raw, neutral XML files. They're not online help specific, they're not knowledge base specific, they're not PDF specific, they're not Word specific, they're nothing until we transform them. And so in an XML world, there are these things called transforms, which is fancy for take my raw XML content and make it into something that people can use. So there's some complicated things out there like XSLT and XSLFO. These are all things that take our raw content and make it beautiful looking for folks to see and to be rendered. Well, a lot of people don't care about all that XML alphabet soup. They just want it to work and they want it to look good. So we simplified everything. We put these transforms in Flare for you and we call them publishing targets. And a publishing target is a recipe file that tells Flare how to process these raw neutral topics so that the output is what we want and for whom we want and what is it going to look like. So I can create some various targets or some recipes in Flare. I may want to create one for the folks that are using the standard version of our product. I'm going to tell that target file, among other things, I'm going to say, hey, I want to get rid of anything I've marked as Pro and PDF. I don't want it to show up at all when I build this output. I may have another one for the Pro version of the product. I want to make sure I have all the professional stuff in there, but I definitely want to get that standard and the PDF specific tags out of there. And then of course I need to make that standard PDF file for the folks that buy the standard version of our product. So I'm going to make sure I exclude anything I've marked as Pro. So if I need a new output, I don't duplicate my content, I just create a new publishing target and it becomes this publish on demand kind of system. And then from there we can generate our different outputs for the different audiences. So the folks that buy the standard version, they're only going to see those orange bits and of course those common paragraphs. Folks that buy the Pro version, they're going to see the content specific for them, which are those blue bits, of course those common elements that we left alone. And then our user guide for the PDF for the standard folks. It's going to include the red bits, which is specific to the standard product, those common paragraphs that everybody sees, and just that specific stuff that I only want to show up when we go to PDF. So these colors don't show up in our output. I just want to point that out. They only show up on our source. So that's kind of big picture, but in terms of the real world, it's often boils down to 3 steps. First, we want to give you the ability to import legacy content if you have it. We have a number of importers for lots of things, probably the most popular, Microsoft Word, HTML files. We have importers for other project files that we can bring in from other tools. Once everything is imported into Flare, well, then we can, of course, edit that information that's come in. We can massage it, we can change it, we can do what we want. We can also create new topics within the Flare editor. And once everything is edited and styled the way we want, well, then we can get into that publishing exercise and we can build lots of outputs. So, of course, some of the most popular ones, we can go direct to PDF. We can generate beautiful responsive HTML5 sites. Some of the others too, we can publish directly to Salesforce Knowledge and also Zendesk Guide. So lots of options there for publishing content. So with that, I'm going to put PowerPoint away and we're going to bring up Flare and take a look at the UI and have some fun. So when you first open up Flare, you come to this start page here. And some people breeze right through it and they start digging in and getting lost, and that's fine. But we do give you access to some things that can be helpful as a new user. For one, we give you access to this new project wizard. So this new project wizard gets you started working through something from nothing. So we can start by giving our new project a name. We can choose either a blank project and completely start from scratch, but we also have over 20 project templates built into Flare to help you get started. So these come with some placeholder topics, some style sheets with some style properties defined, some page templates for creating really nice looking PDFs, and web-based templates for responsive HTML5. And each one of these has some different characteristics. And as you toggle through these different options, you get a little bit of a description and preview of what it looks like. And again, nothing in here is set in stone. These are just there to get you started. We fully expect everybody to change these things up. They're just meant to take some of the heavy lifting from a design standpoint out for you. We also give you access to additional project templates on our website. And this is a page that's actually sort of living and breathing. We always are adding to it. But here we've uploaded project templates for you to look at. You can preview any of them and check them out and peruse. And if something catches your eye and you want to use it, well, you can download the project template for free and use that as a starting point. So another option to start with something and take some of the heavy lifting out of the design process for you. But that's totally up to you. We just give you quick access to it. I already started a project for this presentation. In fact, I started it based on one of those built-in project templates that we just saw. A couple things to point out on the left-hand side, there's two areas where you spend quite a bit of time. There's the Content Explorer. We also have the Project Organizer. In addition to the Content Explorer and Project Organizer, we also have a ribbon up top, which is someplace you'll be quite often. Various commands and things you'll need to do live in this ribbon. In terms of the Content Explorer, all of our topics, those little Lego bricks I mentioned, they all live here in our Content Explorer. And you can organize them into various folders if you'd like. There's ways to create new folders easily and drop your topics in there for organizational purposes, or they can live right under this root content folder. It's up to you. Every project also comes with a resources folder. Now, what lives here? Well, supporting files to our topics live in the resources folder. So things like screenshots, multimedia files, our style sheets, which control the look and feel of our topics, live here. We also have dedicated table style sheets, which control the look and feel of our tables and keep them consistent. Snippet files, which are reusable chunks of content, live here. And we'll be in and out of this throughout the next session. So that's the Content Explorer. The Project Organizer, this houses a lot of the overarching gearing of the project. So things that affect the project as a whole. So like our target files, those recipe files that I mentioned that transform our content into something beautiful, they live here in the Project Organizer. Our conditional tags, which we can use across our projects, those color codes, which lets us know what content is special, live here and our Project Organizer. So you'll often be going back and forth between these two, and you can toggle between them down here on the bottom left-hand side. So let's start with the Content Explorer and play with this a little bit. If we want to start opening up a file in our project and start working on a topic, we just double-click it on the left, and that file opens up in the right hand here in the center editing pane. We call this an XML editor, our XML editor. Now, we say it's an XML editor, but you don't have to know how to spell XML in order to use it. We wanted to model it after something familiar like Word. We wanted to be this visual experience. So for example, I can just start typing. In fact, I'm going to type some words that we're going to talk about so that I don't forget. So I'm typing just like I would in something like Word. If I need to make a stepped procedure or some sort of list, I can highlight my information. And in this home ribbon menu, in this paragraph section, I've got quick access to bulleted lists and numbered lists that I can use. So perhaps I'll drop in a stepped procedure here, step 1, 2, and 3. We can also work with images and multimedia files. few different ways to insert images. We do have an insert ribbon up here. So I can insert images, I can bring in multimedia files. So if I were to bring in an image, we have some choices. As you can see, we can bring in lots of image file types. We support vector and raster images. This is replicating what's happening in the directory over here. So we can choose an image in our resources folder if we want. We can also browse out to the network or some other resource that we have access to bring in a file from the outside. So perhaps I have an image somewhere that I need to grab that's not in my project yet. I can select it, get a nice little preview as to what it's going to be. And when I click OK, Flare's going to prompt me to copy it into my project. And that's good because we've just inserted that image in here by reference. Now, remember we said that images live in this resources folder here. So where did it go? Well, if I expand this folder, I got a lot of assets in this template project. And if we scroll down, there's that image I just copied in. So now I can use it again in any other topic. And because we've inserted into our topic by reference here, if somebody internally decides that this login screen needs to change, or you've got new UI or new colors or something about this is going to change, you have to update the user guides, the training manuals, the knowledge base. Everything has to reflect that new UI. Well, you don't have to go into the thousands of places where you've inserted that image. If you have a new image that's called login.png, you can swap it out here. Everywhere you've used that image, it's going to update for you. We can also work with multimedia files. So if we want to drop in a movie, I can insert a multimedia file. As you can see, we support lots of different compiled movie formats. Probably the most popular is going to be MP4, but as you can see, you've got lots of choices here. We can also insert movies that are streaming from a streaming service like YouTube or Vimeo if we want to. So I can go ahead and drop my YouTube video in. Now it's not going to play in the editor. We'll be able to preview this in a second, and of course it'll work when we build, but we're dropping in a placeholder for that video. So it can be compiled and out there on a streaming service, if that's your preference. So pretty basic editing capabilities, but there's some other things we can do as an author that help us take advantage of content reuse and single sourcing. So the first thing I want to talk about is variables. Let's take a look at this sentence. It says, here are the basic steps for using FictionSoft Enterprise. Well, suppose I wanted to click in here and change this text of FictionSoft Enterprise to something else. Flare won't let me. It's got this funny gray background. It's kind of got some polka dots in there. In fact, if I hover, Flare actually tells me that this is a variable. And it has a product name variable associated with it, and it's defined right now as FictionSoft Enterprise. Well, what the heck is a variable? Well, a variable in Flare is a placeholder for a short string of text. And the benefit to using a variable is that it gives you a single place to define what that text is going to be project-wide. So variables are great for things like product names, version numbers, company names, copyright years, perhaps a contact name, any short string of text that you think is going to change in the future and you're not sure what it's going to be, consider using a variable. In fact, as we're typing away as an author, Flare actually helps us to ensure that we are using as much of these reusable bits as possible. As an example, if I start typing something like this, notice that I started to type the word, I just typed in FIC as if I was typing in fiction. Well, Flare is sensing that I'm starting to type one of those reusable objects, and it's saying, hey, I see you may be using one of these. Do you want to go ahead and use it? Now, if I didn't, I could just keep typing and that would go away. But this is Flare sort of prompting me and reminding me that I've got a reusable bit of text that I can use. All I have to do is click enter, and it drops in that variable for us. Well, at some point, maybe there's a branding change within your organization. Somebody comes along and says, hey, we're not calling our product FictionSoft Enterprise anymore. We're calling it FictionSoft Pro. I need you to update the user guides, the training docs, the knowledge base. Everything has to reflect this new branding that we're rolling out. Well, we don't have to go into the hundreds of topics where we've actually hand typed the word FictionSoft Enterprise. We don't have to go through a multi-file find and replace exercise. We can just update this variable definition. There's a few ways to get to our variables. They do happen to live in our project organizer right over here. So here's all my variables that came with this template project. But we can also get quick access to them right as we're typing. I'm a big fan of the right-click menu in Flare because I can often find about 99% of the things I want to do right from that context menu. So if I right-click on one of these variables, because I need to change it to meet corporate standards, I can right-click and choose Open Variable Set. And I love this option because it takes me right to where I want to go, which is my variables for my project. Now there's that product name, currently defined as FictionSoft Enterprise. But corporate said we're changing it, we're calling it FictionSoft Pro. So if I make that one change, if I save that change, everywhere I've used that variable now, it's going to be updated. So it's a simple example, only in 2 places, but imagine your product name or a copyright year or an address being referenced in lots of places. This saves quite a bit of editing time. What if you've got a larger chunk of content that you need to use over and over? Maybe a series of steps or styled admonitions or a table with data or a paragraph that you write often. For those larger chunks of content, we can use what we call snippets. So snippets are like variables in that they're inserted into our topic by reference. The difference, however, is that snippets can be styled, they can contain images, they can contain tables, they can contain anything you'd put into a full topic, actually. And we edit them like topics in the editor here, which we'll do. I like to think of them, though, like subtopics. They don't really fit that mold of being a complete communication. They're sort of meant to augment our entire topic. So as an example, I'll show you what I mean. Let's go back to our Content Explorer here. Let's open up another topic. So we've been in basic steps, but I'm going to go ahead and double click on this topic here called Getting Started. Maybe this is a procedure that we use often. Well, I don't want to have to come to Getting Started and copy and paste this content and use it in other topics. And I certainly don't want to rewrite it again, because if it's going to be the same in many places, I could run the risk of having something inconsistent or look different, use different verbiage. So I can make this a snippet. I'll go ahead and highlight this information. And there's a button in the home ribbon here that's quite handy called Create Snippet. Now I have to give it a name because snippets are separate files in Flare. And by default, snippets live in this resources folder on the left, and they're going to live in their own folder here called Snippets for easy access. So I'll go ahead and click Create. Now you'll notice that my content didn't change. But if I tried to click in here and edit this, I can't, because this whole bit of content is coming from that snippet that I just created. What if I need to use it in this other topic here? Maybe I need to use that procedure right here, that snippet procedure I just created in this overall topic. Well, one easy way to do it is to navigate to your snippets file. There's that file that I just created. It's called New Snippet. I didn't change the name. So I'll go ahead and drop it in. And there's that chunk of information. So again, kind of like that variable, if somebody decides that that procedure needs to change, well, we don't want to go into all the places where we've typed that information or do multi-file find and replace. All we have to do is edit our snippet file. So if I access my snippet file over here, I'll double click on it. It opens in our XML editor, and we can edit this thing and change it up however we want. Perhaps we don't need step number 3. I can highlight step number 3, get rid of it. When I save that change, everywhere I've used that snippet, it will update for me in all of the topics where it's used. So here we can see step 3 is gone, and step 3 is gone here as well. So again, variables, short strings of text, they adopt the style around it. Snippets are for those larger chunks of content that we need to use over and over. They can be styled, have tables, images, movies, etc. Before we talk about conditions, I do want to point out some elements over here on the left-hand side. These are what are called our XML Structure Bars. It's actually technology that we've patented. And what these are, these show us a visual representation of the underlying document structure. So you can turn them on or off. If you don't like them, if you find them distracting, you can turn them off. There's a button down here in the toolbar, or I'm sorry, in the editor. And if I hover, it may be kind of hard to see, but it says toggle show blocks. If I click it, they go away. And if I click it, they come back on. These are quite handy, and I encourage you as a new user to keep them on because they do tell us what's happening under the hood. We can see right away that we've got a first level heading here in H1. You can see I have a paragraph block. Here's an ordered list with some list items. Here's an image. Here's that snippet block that I inserted. into my topic. We can actually manipulate content structurally here. For example, this is great when you've got a stepped procedure. Maybe we decide that step number 3 is in the wrong position. It should really be step number 2. Well, I don't have to copy and paste and worry about numbering being messed up. I can just click and drag. Wherever I see that little blue arrow, that's Flare saying, yep, it's legally valid for you to put me there. And when I let go, step number 3 became step number 2. All of my numbering self-healed. I'm not left with anything out of sorts. We can also use these structure bars to apply conditional tags to our content. Perhaps we're writing this basic steps topic here. We may be generating this in HTML5. We may be, it may live in some PDF user guides that we're going to be generating, but there may be some sensitive information in this. Maybe there's some content in here that needs to be hidden depending on what we're generating. Well, we don't want to duplicate basic steps and rewrite it. We can use those conditional markers. So maybe as an example, step number 2, this is sensitive information. I don't want it to show up when we go online, when we're producing our HTML5. Maybe we're doing a knowledge base. I don't want it to show up. I only want it to show up when we go to PDF. So I can select this item here, or I could have highlighted it as fine. And again, because I'm a big fan of that right-click menu, I can easily get to my color-coded conditional tags. They do live in our project organizer, so they are a project-level gearing element. So they do live here. I can access them here. But if I want to just sort of be in my writing environment, I can right-click, and I get access to the same conditions. Now, this is a template project, so it only came with 1, 2, 3, 4 conditional tags. But when you're working in Flare and tinkering, you can create any number of conditional tags you want. You can call them whatever you want, and you can give them whatever color you want. You can even add little comments next to your condition tags to remind yourself or other writers on your team, what's that tag for? When should we be using it? So I'm going to go ahead and give this a PDF only tag, and there's that color code that shows up. So this is information that's special, only pertains to the PDF. We can also apply condition tags to words. So maybe I want to give this one a special tag. We can actually put conditions, we can conditionalize down to the character level here. We can put conditions on entire files if we want to. Maybe we need to apply a condition tag to this whole folder of content. So really flexible. Maybe this movie here, maybe this is only for my online output. I don't want it to show up at all when we go to PDF. So I'll go ahead and put a condition tag on that movie. So we can mark up our topics and our source material how we want. Sometimes, however, when we're using conditions, although they're quite powerful, our topic can light up a bit like a rainbow. Lots of colors going on. I only have 2 at play, so it's not so bad. But sometimes you have a lot. So we don't have to build our whole project to see what's going on here. Sometimes it's helpful to see, well, what is this procedure going to look like when we go to PDF or online? The editor does give us the ability to preview our topics. So this button up here lets us preview our topics in any of the targets in our project. Now, again, it's a template project, so it came with a handful of targets or recipe files already. So if I want to see, well, gosh, how is this going to look in my HTML5 potentially? Well, let me open this guy up over here, and we'll compare our source to our HTML5. Here we can see, again, this is an online output, so I don't want any print-specific tags to show up. That sensitive information needs to be removed. So we can see from our source, the word basic is gone. Of course, step number 2 has been removed. Also notice Flare is very self-healing when it comes to those numbering schemes. Just because we removed step number 2 doesn't mean that I'm going to have numbering out of whack. So everything reordered and numbered appropriately. And there's my video that I could play. Maybe we want to see how this is going to look for print, maybe our page break behaviors and such. So we can take a look and preview it as PDF. So there's my content that's turned back on. Step number 2 is on, but my video is gone. So again, 2 different outputs, all stemming from the same source. By the way, this preview window is dynamic. If you wanted to edit your topic, you don't have to close down this preview window. Some people like to have this open. We can dock it over on the right-hand screen if we want, and always keep it open. If you're working in a dual monitor situation, you can drag it over to another screen and always have it open. And what do I mean by dynamic? Well, if we're writing away here, maybe I save more new content. When I save that file, notice that my preview is going to update as well. So I don't have to shut it down just to reopen and reopen it just to see those changes. I can keep that going if I'd like, but I'm going to increase my real estate here, so I'll put preview away. So that's a little bit on the editing side of things. I want to talk quickly about importing, because many of you may be in a position where you've got existing content that you need to reuse, maybe in the form of Microsoft Word or FrameMaker or whatever. So when we are talking about that stuff, that legacy content, we can start brand new projects based on that content if we want. But if you have a project already brewing, perhaps there's a template project you really like that you're customizing, or maybe you started one from scratch and you want to bring some content in, you can do that too. So if you've got a project started in brewing, we can bring content in and use it in our existing project. So the way we do that, and because I've got one started here, that's the process I'm going to do right now, is in the project ribbon, we can start an import wizard for any of these files here, but we're going to choose Microsoft Word. That's a pretty common one. So I'll choose Word, and the Microsoft Word import wizard will appear. And I'm going to tell Flare to import a set of Word files into this project. Now this is where I tell Flare, all right, well, what Word files do we want to bring in? So we can bring in one or many at a time. So I'm going to add this, hit my little green plus button here. I'm going to bring in a handful of docs. So I'm going to multi-select some documents here. Okay. Now, I happen to know a little bit about these documents, much like you will probably know something about your Word documents. I happen to know that 3 of these documents came from one department that's adhering to a particular Word template. Well, one of the documents is coming from the engineering team, and they decided to follow their own Word template. So I'm using this as a worst case scenario kind of example because we can handle that kind of situation. So when I select next, Flare's going to do a deep scan of these docs. We want to extract and reuse as much information in that Word doc as possible. Tables, bullets, styles, etc. And we come to this first big decision point here. So this new topic styles dialog is important. This is how Flare takes those long linear Word documents and breaks them into individual topics. It does that by looking at the word styles in your document. So one tip is when you're importing from Word, make sure that Word doc is as well formed as possible. Make sure you're not using inline formatting to break up the sections in your Word document. We want to leverage those heading styles in Word so that we don't have to copy and paste content into Flare. We want to create chunks of content we can use. So I'm going to choose perhaps heading 1. I want to break here. Now we don't want to forget about that engineering team. Remember, they decided to use their own Word template. Looks like they renamed their Word styles. So we want to utilize those as well. So in this new topic styles list, I told Flare the headings that I want to use. So every time Flare comes to one of these styles in those 4 Word documents, it's going to break and create a new topic for me. So when I click finish, you can see I get a lot of HTML. These represent topics. Okay, so here's an H1, here's some content, I got my image. There was probably another H1 or an H2 after this image, so that's why we have a break. Now you can preview what you're getting out of a result of this import. If you don't like it, you can always cancel and go back to that new topic styles dialog, and maybe you have to get a little bit more granular. Maybe you had a heading 3 in your Word doc that you needed to use. Well, you can drop that into the new topic styles and rerun it, and you can preview what you get. But I like what I see, so I'm going to go ahead and click accept. And what Flare did in this example, it went ahead and created a folder for me in my Content Explorer and dropped all of those topics into that folder for me. So I can retool these, I can edit them. Now I can do whatever I want. They're topics in my Flare project. Now, one thing I want to point out that was a little confusing for me at one point early on is that I'd look at my topics in this Content Explorer, and maybe I'd want to move this topic here in getting started. Well, I can certainly drag and drop it, but maybe I wanted it to be like right here in this position. Flare would always drop these files alphabetically, and I was really frustrated because I wanted them in a different order. Well, the Content Explorer is not meant to do that. The Content Explorer is always going to store our files alphabetically. So as an author or a team of authors, we can organize our topics and find them and have some sort of order from a storage standpoint. The order of topics and in terms of their presentation is controlled by a different file altogether in our project organizer. it's controlled by what's called a TOC, or table of contents. So the TOC in Flare, or a table of contents file, plays a really important role. It controls the order and the topics that are delivered in an output. So this is the file that lets us stitch together whatever topics we want for a given deliverable. So it's okay to have more than one table of contents in a project, because the different outputs you produce may have a slightly different order of topics. You may not be pulling all of your topics from your Content Explorer into your Quick Start Guide. Well, that's okay. So let's open up one of these and play with it here. So I'll open up this one. So this kind of acts like an outline, like a map of topics. This is what our end users will see. So if I want basic steps to be first, I can just click and drag it and put him wherever I want in the order. I can also use these little buttons up here to move them around. I can create additional books and nest books within books. This is where I pull together the order and the outline that I want my customers to see. Maybe we need to use one of those topics that we just imported from those Word docs, maybe about firewalls here. Well, I can drag this topic over and put it wherever I want in the hierarchy. Why is this text blue? Well, this text is blue. It's actually indicating to us that the label for this book in this table of contents page, this is actually talking to the topic title, or the heading of the topic. And why is that cool? Well, this is linking to that basic steps topic. So when we build this and click on this label here, it's going to show us that basic steps topic. Well, if we ever changed H1 in basic steps, if we ever changed that header, because there's that connection there, this is going to update also. So we don't have to update this content in two places should we decide to update this heading text. So we've got that connection there. So save that file and the new edits here. So now that we've got our outline together, let's transition and talk about those recipe files. Let's build some output and take a look at what we've been making. So again, those recipe files, those target files, they live in our project organizer. Now this is a template project. So this template project organized the online targets and the PDF targets and the Word targets together in their own folder here. Well, let's take a look at one of these. I'm going to look at some of these things in detail. We won't go through all of these tabs. So we'll build some different outputs. So things will look a little bit different, but it's all pulling from the same set of source files. So we want to tell the target file, what are we making? Well, it's already set to HTML5, but you can see we can build a lot of different outputs. We want to tell that target file also, what table of contents do we want to use? What order of topics do we want our end users to see? So we can choose from whatever TOC we want in our project. We were just editing that one called online output, so that's the one I want to make sure we use. Conditional text, we can tell the target file, okay, those color codes we're using, what do we need to get rid of? What sensitive information? Well, I want to make sure I exclude all of those PDF specific ones. Quick mention of variables. If you recall, we changed that product name variable from FictionSoft Enterprise to FictionSoft Pro. If we want to, we can override the definition of that project level variable at the target level. What that means is I could change this text to anything I want. It's not going to affect any of my other source topics. It's not going to affect what that variable says in any of these other output files either. It'll just affect it in this particular target output, and it'll change it dynamically for us when we build. So that is an option. And that's it. We'll go ahead and click build. Now we'll see a little window down here. It's churning out our build. Now let's build some other ones as well. If you don't need to go into the target file and configure anything, you can just right click and you can build right from the project organizer. We'll see a new row here. Maybe we'll go ahead and build a PDF as well. So we're going to build 3 outputs, all pulling from the same set of source files, and we'll take a look at some of the differences. So we see that it's done. We got this dark green bar, compile status done. All you have to do is double click on the row and it's going to open in your web browser. Now what we're looking at is called responsive HTML5 top nav. It's called top nav because in this particular template, web template, or skin, I should say, we took the table of contents that you often see down the left and we put it across the top to make it more like a portal or a site, kind of that corporate website look and feel. So this is our table of contents. Here's that. I'll go ahead and navigate to basic steps. There's that topic we were just working on. We could play our YouTube video if we want. Now take the look and feel with a grain of salt. This is the bone stock out of the box, no customizations at all, basic HTML5 template. So in your world, of course, you would have your own logo, your own colors, perhaps, a different height of a hero image here. All these things can be changed. Even this text in the search bar can be changed. Maybe you want it totally square, not rounded at all. Well, we have a full skin editor in Flare that lets you turn all these stylistic dials if you want, so that it looks how you want. But in this particular template, we wanted search to be very prominent. What do people do when they get stuck? They often turn to a search engine like Google and they do a search. So if I were to search on the word topic here, I even get these googly style results. I'm not looking through a long string of PDF or Word docs to try and find what I need. I have search results that are ranked based on relevancy. And one thing that I love about the MadCap search is if you happen to have a lot of technical terms in your documentation or your materials, you can build what's called a glossary in Flare. And this template project had a glossary already started, so that's why we're seeing this example here. But imagine just a table with a term that has a definition, term with a definition. And it's great because if your users happen to search on a term that's defined in your glossary, they're going to get it it's going to show up right at the top of the list. It's kind of like when you do a search in Google for a word and Google just kind of knows you wanted the definition and the spelling of it, always shows up at the top. We're trying to mimic that environment because if you've got a lot of technical terms, it's nice to have some sort of definition right there at the top. So it's also responsive out of the box. So if I was accessing the site on a much smaller screen size, see if I can mimic. So I've sort of shrunk it down to kind of mimic the width of a tablet or a phone. Notice what happens to my skin. I automatically get this handy little hamburger menu that I could tap through and navigate if I want. Of course, all that behavior still works. We could tap on it and the image would get bigger. So all responsive, and even the content on our page responds as well. So we can build responsive layouts. So if we've got lots of tiles stacked across horizontally when we look at it on a web browser, they're going to behave and respond appropriately when we are looking at it on a much smaller screen size. We're not using our thumb and our index finger to navigate around on the page. So that's an example of top nav. Let's take a look at the other one we made real quick. This is what's called SideNav. Okay, same content, just a different web wrapper. In Flare, we separate content from look and feel so that we can change the way things look on a dime. So here, that table of contents is in this case, down the side. We call it SideNav. So if I select basic steps, same content, again, just a slightly different wrapper. Now this one's using a different type of search, so I'll show you what I mean. So this one is using an Elastic search engine, and that wasn't a very good example. But with Elasticsearch, we can configure that. It's actually an open source enterprise search technology that you can switch out in your target file. And some of the benefits of using Elasticsearch is that you can search and retrieve non-Flare topic files. So if you're publishing PDFs or Word docs as part of your project, those will be searched and retrieved in the search results. It also has the predictive search. So if you've ever done a search on something like a shopping site like Amazon, for example, and you start typing in a word, the search is starting to predict what you're typing in. You get that same kind of experience if you were to use Elasticsearch. It's free. It comes with Flare. It's something that you can test and use and decide if you want to do. So both MadCap Search and Elasticsearch are good search options available to you. Now, I also went ahead and brought up some other examples. Oh, I almost forgot about our PDF. Let's take a look at the PDF that we made. Okay, let's drag this guy over. Here we go. Now, this is where I'd like to show you a single page view so that we can see this a little bit better on my screen. Here we go. So again, this is a PDF output from that same set of source files. Take the layout in this look and feel with a grain of salt. I'm just using one of the built-in page layout templates that this template project provides. So here's our dynamically generated table of contents. It's also over here on the left-hand side. Of course, we can navigate. There's that basic steps topic. Our video is gone because if you recall, we put that conditional tag on there to remove it from our PDF guide. Our pagination can be controlled and it can look however we want. Maybe we want odd and even page footers, right? So if we were sending it to print, we want our odd pages on the right, we want our even pages on the left. We can force empty pages into our PDFs if we want to. Lots of customization that goes into creating PDFs, lots of options. In fact, I brought up some examples of what other people have done. Let me open up my web browser here. Here's a company called Sisense. They're big in the business intelligence, business analytics
world. So they're using Flare to produce all of their product documentation. They used one of a skin file within Flare, a template, and they really customized it to meet the needs of their own corporate branding requirements. They also linked to different versions of their documentation right from their homepage, and all of the PDFs that they're generating from Flare. So this is how they wanted it to look. So looks really nice, matches their corporate style sheet. So great way of customizing the content right out of Flare. Here's a company called Cloudistics. Also, they're using that sort of top nav look here, where they've got this homepage that they've designed in Flare to direct readers. They're actually using a blend of kind of top and side nav, which is kind of cool. So here's some navigation down the left. This one's kind of neat because they've translated their source content into another language. So they've linked their translated site. They use this little language picker here. We can translate, or we can pick the language that we want it to be in. So that translated source project is linked to the source language project. So one thing about Flare is we can translate all of that content as well, and we can link those translated sites easily. Here's a company that went with the SideNav template and customized it for their own needs. So again, looks very different, meets their own corporate branding requirements. And in terms of PDF, we've lots of different options. We can really customize this to meet our own needs. So Sony uses Flare for much of their product documentation. Their own custom PDF page template you can see is in play. If we go down to their table of contents, here's that dynamically generated TOC. We'll go ahead and click on one of these. So their page layout actually has those odd and even page headers and footers. So if we were printing it out and having it bound, we can see that the even is on one side, odd is on the left. So again, we can customize the way this looks. One last one I'll show you here. This is an interesting one because we were just looking at software. Here's a company that makes different instrumentations, and so lots of different instruments, lots of different flavors of them. There's some overlap in content, but there are some differences. So they use Flare for their product documentation. But this one's interesting if you're coming from more of an engineering side of things. Lots of engineering diagrams that they're using in their print documentation. So really customized to meet their requirements too, but all done out of Flare. So lots of examples here. In fact, if anybody's interested, we have a customer showcase page on our website. And so sometimes when, we don't always get to see what people do with Flare, but when it is publicly facing, it's fun to show it off. So you can always come here and see some examples of what other people have done. You may get some great design ideas from this. We've got lots of online and print-based examples here. So welcome you to peruse this site on your own. So I wanted to thank you all. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Again, I know we covered a lot in this session. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions about what you saw today. If you would like to schedule a call or a demo for your team, we'd be happy to do that as well. So thank you again, and hope to see you on the next session.